former desert racer, I am very excited about this next machine we got to show you. We are out at Kevin Jackson's place in North Phoenix. Kevin, tell us a little bit about what we are about to take a look at.
Well, this is a Dean Sundahl started chassis that over the last 6 years or so, we've been redesigning and working out all the bugs with it and trying to make a complete running desert machine out of it. But it started out, I got it from Dean as a chassis and arms, and we took it from there and kind of went wild with it. It's got pretty much everything that you could find in a off-road desert car or truck packaged down into tube chassis ATV.
I'm sure most of you have heard of Dean Sundahl, and if you've probably seen his Banshee, which had was it 16 inches of travel?
Yeah, around 16 inches
of
travel, no link rear suspension, just totally off the wall based off of desert racing stuff.
But this is extremely rare, a Honda 250R done up the same way. And you've had a hand in a lot of this machine, fixing things that you thought could be done better.
Yeah, Dean had a lot of the older technology that was used in the 80s and 90s in truck and buggy racing, and it was applied to this, and it's just kind of outdated compared to what we do now. You know, and then when you get into motorsports and racing, you know, there's always room for improvement on what you're working on. So I've taken a lot of my knowledge from trucks and buggies and applied it to this, and you know, Dean built a great vehicle, and they've got a couple flaws to them, and we tried to address those and fix them.
Let's start with the front end, and we'll work our way back.
Front end, we're getting about 15 inches of travel out of it as it sits. One of the things that all vehicles kind of have is bump steer, and that's unwanted toe change, and it's really just what it is. It's unwanted. And this thing, any desert racing vehicle, when you get a lot of travel into it, that's a real hard thing you got to work out. And especially with only having so much movement that you can get out of the steering. So we took that and we did spent a lot of time cycling it. We ended up cutting the shock mounts off and changing them and moving them, and did a more updated shock setup on it. And like I said, just took what we know from cars and trucks and applied it to this as best as our ability.
This is definitely a one-off machine with a lot of custom setup. I mean, you couldn't go buy this and expect to without some fabricating knowledge or whatever.
No, and this is not anything that you can just go buy the frame and bolt your existing bike to. It's like you're having to build things on the fly with this as you go. There's just, you run into a problem and go, how do I address this? How do I fix it? And build something to take care of the problem. In
fact, we can look at that on this other side here. You even had to do some custom work on the lower suspension just to make sure the pipe cleared.
Yeah, no, I kind of killed two birds with one stone, because I had to change the suspension geometry a little bit to get the camber and caster angles that I wanted out of it. And while I did that, I moved some things around and I made clearance for the pipe. One of my goals with this was to take a pipe off the shelf and be able to fit it in there without modifying it. The customer that owns this one has another bike that has a similar setup, and our one had to make a custom pipe for it. So we're trying to avoid that. And you know, I notched out, we were very, very close without hitting, but I had to take the lower arm and notch it out. But you know, one of those things, when you're building it, you all have to have everything tied together. While I'm working on the front suspension, I have to keep in mind of the exhaust the whole time. So
let's talk about the electronics on this, because you do see you have a battery up front. This is a lot different than stock also. You've got two different systems on it.
This has a DC system in it too, as an AC for ignition, and then you have, you know, DC charging system. One of my buddies, Michael Sisma, he was a real pioneer in doing the DC system on these, and he built a harness that you have a battery in it, you have the voltage regulator, and now you can run DC light, you can run LED lights without them burning out, because I'm sure a lot of people have had it. You take an LED light bar, you hook it to your bike, it burns out. Now you don't have that problem, where you have a separate system, and we're able to run all kinds of stuff. Like this has a fan, because we use the radiator out of a YFZ on it, and now we have a cooling fan that'll work off of a temp sensor that'll all be hooked into the battery. And it also charges off the stator still. Let's
talk a little bit about the engine, what's been done to that.
This is LRD or LED 370. Another nice motor Arwen did. Customer supplied this one, and I don't know too much more about it. I know it runs off of race gas, so it's probably a little ripper. Probably around
high
65.
compression, yeah,
about 65, 70 horsepower. I think about it. We got V-Force reed cage, Sedco carb on it, UPP intake.
This is the original Sundahl tank.
This is a Lance Shoemaker tank, another guy that was popular back in the 80s and 90s. 5-gallon tank. This is like one of those old school desert accessories you always try to find if you can. But no, at least 5 gallons in there. So you can put a whole paint bucket full of gas in there.
And then we got the rear end here too, the swing arm. Like you said, it's probably got what, close to
15 and a half inches of travel. Like the front spindles, we drew fixtures in CAD and we built this swing arm ourselves in-house here. It's all chromoly tubing. Very similar to the no-link setups on the Lone Stars and the JPs and the roll design. Uses a similar shock. But we did take and make the swing arm a little bit longer. That was one request the customer had, was to do a longer swing arm, and not a whole lot of guys that build the no-link swing arms do a longer one. So we lengthened this one, I believe, 1.5 inches or 2 inches.
And then coming back to the air filter, this is part of your experience working with sand cars.
Yeah.
Big filter.
Yeah, no, that's this filter is literally off of a LS7 sand car that I replaced with a aluminum canister style. And once again, when you're building the bike, I fit all that in there with the suspension at full bump so we don't have it hitting the caliper or anything like this. I've learned a lot of stuff with my own personal bike over the years, and I've applied a lot of it to this on here.
Steering stem.
Steering stem is another Frankenstein part on this project. It's a Lager ProTrax 400EX stem that I acquired. And one thing that really kind of went outside the box on this one is we put the steering in the front, which I have not seen very many ATVs with the steering in the front. But Dean's front suspension, it's a crossover steering or suspension. And basically the concept is similar to what you see on a sand car. A longer A-arm gives you less scrub over its travels. So these have to cross over to intersect to get the length that you need. And then they're all out at an angle. So, one of the limitations to suspension in the front of ATV is your steering stem and where those pivots are. With it traditionally in the back, it really put them in a really bad position, not where they needed to be. So one of those late night deals where I'm sitting here trying to figure out on the fly what to do. It's like, well, let's turn this thing around and see what it does. After I started messing with it a little bit here and there and put some time into it, started doing what I wanted it to do. I got the correct Ackerman and all the angles and the knuckles and everything. So it was a lot of work, but it ended up working out pretty well in the end.
So what else are we missing here as far as customization?
I made this nice Timmy Boy Dean Sundahl knockoff bumper because it's kind of hard to build something like this without the OG of desert racing bumpers. We got an LRD aluminum subframe. I tried to save some time here and there where I could, and the subframe on this just wasn't working for us. So we snagged this one off of one of the all aluminum chassis and used it.
The intake boot here too, you said it's a LT?
LT 500 intake boot with a little custom adapter that we got down there. And
you said you had to chew up the frame a little bit back here just to make that clear.
Yeah, no, we had to do a lot of frame modifications. Everything is just as you go. You got to get the shock in there where nothing hits. That's the whole thing. You're trying to build it with nothing to hit on there and make everything work properly. Yeah.
So where is this machine headed next?
It's heading to Glamis as soon as we're done here, and we're gonna hopefully go do some testing with it.
Yeah, we're not gonna get a chance to see it in action or get a test ride on that. That may happen in the future.
Hopefully.
But it's such an iconic machine that we just had to come over and take a look at this. Thank you for sharing
I
this
appreciate
with us.
you coming over. It's definitely an honor to be in a childhood magazine we all looked up to.
Appreciate it, Kevin.
Yeah, no problem.